So a question that's come up lately is how you write and schedule your emails or LinkedIn posts. And of course, like one of the biggest pain points that creators have is not being able to schedule them on time or come up with ideas or sort of like bridge those gaps together. And I think sharing what works for me might be helpful to you. So one of the things that I do is I use Google Keep or Apple Notes. I keep things simple. I've gone through all the tools under the sun and then just realized, the simple intricacies of life are the ones that are the most efficient. So what I do every week is look for ideation, right? What do I mean by ideation? Have I had a call with a client? Have I had an interaction where I solved something on the business side of things? And what were these recommendations? So for example, at the end of a call, maybe I package somebody's offer or I help them with their profile or their emails or posts or whatever. I'll put their name and write like 3 short bullet points as to what I've done so I can come back to those. And another thing that I do is I look on the life side of things. So maybe I went grocery shopping, I went to the beach, some sort of incident that happened along the week that I can share a story about just to keep things a little bit more interesting, especially on the email side, because you want people to keep coming back and consuming your stuff. Now, in doing so, that helps me when I do sit and write every Wednesday. I have somewhere to look at and things to draw from. And one of the key principles that I use is one called Sawdust, which stems from a guy, I think, on Instagram called Visualize Value, where he says you shouldn't create content, you should collect content. So if we think of a logo designer, for example, who makes a logo, the logo in itself is great, but what decisions did he make? What mistakes did he make? What was the requirements call with the client? Why did he scrap those little bits and pieces? So in the process of sawing the wood, sawdust falls on the floor and you want to go and collect that and talk about that process in your content. So that really helps me sort of come up with posts up front and schedule them, but I always schedule them on a separate day. So I want to treat two sides of the brain differently. So the creative side does it on one day after the ideation, and then the scheduling side of the emails or the posts happens on a Friday, for example. Now, a very simple model that I use to also keep on track is a lens approach with a little framework that I'll share with you today. So what do I mean by lens? So in my world, anything that I say goes through the lens of the word monetize, right? So even if I'm talking about watermelons or bananas or coffee or business, it still goes through the lens of monetize because I help people make money online. So have that in the back of your mind, define your lens, and then I basically break down my content in this little mini framework, which I call the teach, show, share, invite framework. So teaching is showing somebody what's in your head, all that knowledge that's packed in there and getting it out there to teach somebody something. Show content is basically the sawdust where I dive deep in to show the model or the unique mechanism of how something works for me. You've seen me sort of talk about the modern maker model in previous videos or posts, or doing a deep dive to show how I solved this problem. Share content is essentially content that's unrelated to business. That could be hobbies and interests. So I talk a lot about running, a lot about basketball, for example, or my life as a solopreneur, but always feed it back through the lens that I mentioned earlier, which is monetize. Like, how am I able to run or play basketball because my business allows me to do that? And then invite content, which is the last pillar, is essentially the social proof, the testimonials that I show to up my know, like, and trust factor. And then through that, I make an invitation to either get off of LinkedIn and watch my YouTube, or get off of LinkedIn and, subscribe to my email or make an offer every day, like buy my low ticket, mid ticket, or high ticket product. So in a nutshell, depending on whether you want to have more of a growth strategy, then you would have more sharing and teach content. If you'd like to make more money, then you would have more of the show and the invite type content. I like to use a good mix of both. So I'd say for me, it's more monetization and then growth at the moment. So I do like a 60-40 split or a 70-30 split, because then you can experience like audience fatigue. And when your audience is fatigued, you counterbalance that with a little bit more share and teach sort of stuff. With my emails, it's a little bit more free form, because I like to use a little framework called the Story Lesson Pivot Offer Framework, where I come up with little stories in the story bank from my Google Keep or my Apple Notes. And then I always mention a short story. I ask myself, what's the lesson inside that? And I pivot and tie it to an offer, like give someone that aha moment, bridge the gap, and then make an offer. Now, in my head, with my emails, I'm always selling something on a weekly basis. So depending on what I'm selling, that's how the content sort of goes. I see them as little campaigns. So I hope this little bit of insight was useful for you today.